This is Dr. Pat O'Neill of the MUSC Weight Management Center. We'll be spending the next few minutes talking about what's really going on when our weight goes up and when it goes down. And as the title of this talk indicates, it's all about energy balance. A lot of times it can be baffling as to why we get a bigger or smaller number on the scale when we get in on it, compared to what it gave us yesterday or last week or last month. Part of the answer to that has to do with what's actually being weighed. Remember that the scale is giving you your total body weight, and there's a number of components to your total body weight. Two of the important ones are the weight of your body water and the weight of your body fat. As far as water is concerned, it only takes 16 fluid ounces, 1 pint, to make 1 pound on the scale. So if you get on the scale, get off, drink a pint of water, get back on, the scale should show that you're now 1 pound heavier. You certainly haven't gained any fat weight, but you have 1 pint more body water. For this reason, water weight can fluctuate a lot more quickly than does fat weight in the short term. When we're talking about the weight of fat, we're talking about the weight of fat tissue. And fat tissue, we know, serves a number of functions, one of which is actually the production of some important hormones that are necessary for the body to function properly. But more important to our purpose today is that it serves the function of storing energy. When we are able to consume more sources of energy than we use, we can store the difference as fat tissue, and this has served our species very well over the millennia, because in the early days of our species, of course, there were times of scarcity of food and times of plenty, so it was important that we have some energy stores to live off of when times were lean. This takes us to the matter of calories. We may think of calories as some nefarious little items that lurk in very tasty and fattening food to make it so, but in actuality, a calorie has a very straightforward physical definition, and it is actually a unit of heat energy. In fact, it's similar to a BTU that you might be familiar with when you buy an air conditioning or heating system. So this is a measure in food of the potential heat energy that food can provide for our bodies. As mentioned, if we are consuming more energy, more potential energy from food and drink than we are using up, our bodies can store the majority of that in fat tissue. And this takes us to what's called the energy balance equation, which simply states that if we are taking in the same amount of calories that we're expending, our body fat stores should stay the same. But if there's a difference between what we take in and what we burn, the difference will be reflected in a change in body fat. Again, this is called the energy balance equation. And this demonstrates a state where somebody is in balance, where you are consuming the same amount of potential energy in food calories as you are expending. In that case, you would not expect your body fat stores to change. On the other hand, if you take in more calories than you burn, we would expect to store the surplus calories, or most of them, in body fat. And this is what's called positive energy balance, although obviously the outcome of that for most people would be considered to be negative. On the other hand, if you are working on losing weight, you're restricting your intake and increasing your calorie expenditure so that you're burning more calories than you're taking in, that provides a state of negative energy balance, which for the dieter is a positive. Are you confused yet? There's actually a known rate of exchange for the calories to fat exchange, and the rough rule of thumb is that every pound of body fat contains 3,500 calories of potential energy that it's storing. So this means that to lose a pound of body fat, you would need to burn 3,500 calories more than you take in over whatever time period. Similarly, if you take in 3,500 calories more than you burn over whatever time period, we would expect you to gain 1 pound of body fat. And we can bring this down to the daily level for some better understanding of how these changes can take place. For example, if every day you consumed only 100 calories more than you burned, this energy balance exchange rate would predict that at the end of the year you might be the owner of 10 brand new pounds of body fat. Again, this is a rough approximation, a rough rule of thumb, but it's something that you can use to work with. It's important to remember that what we're talking about is a net difference between energy intake and energy expenditure, so that the bottom line on that needs to be a negative if you're going to lose weight. And if we wanted to lose 10 pounds a year, we would think it had to be negative 100 calories a day. But the amount of energy that you consume and the amount that you burn will, of course, vary over time. You might wonder where the calories come from, and this shows you the 4 sources of calories: carbohydrates and protein in their purest form. So if we have pure carbohydrate or pure protein, each provide about 4 calories per gram. Fat, on the other hand, dietary fat, provides about 9 calories per gram. So you can see that it's a much denser source of calories. It's easy to take in a lot of calories in the form of fat than in the form of carbohydrates or protein. Now, where do the calories go? This shows you a pretty commonly accepted method of organizing the ways that our bodies expend energy. And you can see that the largest share is consumed in what's called resting metabolism. This is the energy cost of everything it takes to keep your body in business. Your heart pumping, your cells being repaired and replaced, your blood circulating, all the organs functioning, your liver, your brain, and all those things, chest muscles moving so that you can breathe. Think of it as the body's overhead expense. So no matter what else you do in the way of activity, you will be burning these calories in resting metabolism. And that actually accounts for 60 to 70% of your daily energy expenditure. Physical activity, which is anything beyond sitting perfectly still, can burn for most people at about 20 to 30% of their daily calories that they burn. And what's called the thermic effect of food may account for about 10% of your daily energy expenditure. This is the excess energy expenditure that you can experience after you consume a meal. We require additional energy for the processes of digesting and absorbing the nutrients in that meal. And there's also a tendency for the body to sort of throw off some excess calories right after a meal. So altogether, these would constitute your total daily energy expenditure. Now, one thing that some people think is that folks with a weight problem may have a diminished resting metabolic rate. And actually, this is typically not true. Bigger bodies require more calories, require more energy. This gives you an example of, let's consider a 30-year-old woman who's 5 feet 6 inches tall. Although we can measure directly your metabolic rate in the clinic, there are formulas that can be used to predict it as well. And they typically take into account your age, your gender, your height, and your weight. And as you can see here, somebody who weighs more will have, on average, a significantly higher metabolic rate. Other things that influence metabolic rate are that people who are younger and taller tend to have higher metabolic rates, and men tend to have higher metabolic rates than do women. All of those factors are associated with having a greater amount of lean body mass, muscle and organs, and that's what really consumes the calories. Now, not only do bigger bodies tend to have higher metabolic rates, but they also tend to expend more energy in the course of a given activity. This gives you some examples, again, predicted levels of energy expenditure for compared to someone who's 190 pounds, whether they're at rest or walking and so on. And you can see that the bigger person expends more calories in a given activity. That's because there's a bigger body that's moving. So to remember important issues here, we want you to remember that day-to-day changes on the scale may have nothing to do with whether you followed your diet or whether you were active or not. When you get on the scale today, it doesn't necessarily tell you whether your diet was good yesterday or whether your activity level was high yesterday. Remember, it takes a lot more to lose or gain a pound of fat than it does to lose or gain a pound of water. Remember our rough rule of thumb that 1 pound of body fat contains about 3,500 calories in energy. And therefore, if you create a deficit of 500 calories a day, we would expect on average a 1 pound per week weight loss. Again, that's an average, and remember, changes in your water weight in the short run will influence that your weight changes more than the fat changes will. But I want to emphasize one last thing, and that's that if you reduce your current level of intake by 500 calories, that may or may not create a 500 calorie a day deficit. For example, if you were originally gaining weight, then that indicates that you were already consuming more than your body required. So to create a deficit of 500 calories less than your body requires, you'd need to reduce it by more than 500 calories. Another thing to remember is that with time, as you're dieting and losing weight, your energy expenditure can change. Dieting itself will lower your metabolic rate a small amount fairly quickly. And over time, as you lose weight, remember you now have a smaller body, which should require fewer calories to maintain it. And finally, remember also that if you're calculating your level of energy intake, remember that our estimates and our accuracy can change over time. And sometimes we'll see a certain amount of drift in the actual level of intake as it drifts upward a little bit despite our best intentions. So you want to pay attention to portion size and to exactly how much you are consuming. So I hope this helps you to understand a little bit of what's going on from day to day when you step on the scale. And just remember, in the end, it all adds up. And if you'd like some help getting the math in your energy balance equation to come out a little better, please contact us at the MUSC Weight Management Center. You can visit our website shown here to learn all about our programs, or if you prefer to attend an in-person information session, please contact us at the phone number or email address shown here. Please be aware that if you are an MUSC employee or an MUHA or MUSC physician's employee, we have payroll deduction plans available. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you at the center.